What's good, my folks? I hope your mama and them doing well. But on this motion picture here today, we're going to be discussing lifespans throughout the ancient world that we call mythology. It's bothering me, so I'm going to say it. If you're wondering if the screen crooked or if my lineup crooked, it's my lineup. I'm pretty sure you're all pretty well versed in the knowledge that the folks who came before us supposedly lived for many years. And I mean many. That's gotta puzzle you, right? So why did they get to live long and not us? It's gotta be like we ain't good enough for some, What we gotta do to get 900, shoot at least 300, 200 or some years on our life? Well, I tell you right now, I don't know. But maybe we could figure something out one day. Just maybe. Either way, let's dig deep into the surface of our ancestors and go back in time to the stories that they told. I mean, that's about the closest we're going to get to infinite lifespan, right? Lifespans and longevity is one of the strongest shared memories that we have on Earth. This pattern shows up in every culture, even cultures that have supposedly not even come close to being in contact with each other. I think we may be missing something that they may have understood back then from a philosophical standpoint. See, back in ancient times and throughout just about every myth that I've come across, moving forward was not necessarily progress to their understanding like we see it essentially today. See, today as we progress, we see it from a society standpoint. For example, finding cures for diseases and viruses that plague the world, or finding salvation through our religions. And from a more personal standpoint, getting that new job or raise, finding peace, comfort in your soul, something like that. Almost like finally coming out of the dark ages of humanity. But throughout the ancient myths and history, their standpoint of view was more like the thought that we actually fell from the light. Now, not exactly saying fall from the light into darkness, that's not what I'm saying. Just more like we didn't rise from any darkness. We just simply fell from the light and into like the in-between. You find a pattern when looking through ancient myths of the first humans living way longer lives, while also being physically closer to the gods. For instance, the Greek Golden Ages, when humans lived next to the gods and time was not linear yet. Then you got Adam and Eve in the garden where God visited them often. Or you got Ziusudra from the Epic of Gilgamesh, where the god Enki actually held a very physical, close relationship with him. So we essentially call this the Golden Age, where humans lived among the gods worry-free, a physical paradise where everyone and everything lived in harmony. No suffering, no pain, no labor. Let me let you in on one huge specific detail that I noticed, and you may have too, but throughout the text most mythology and ancient history, it does not say that every human lived longer than the expected life expectancy. Just specific ones that are named, and basically the specific ones that are named had a close link to divineness. Now that's not all of the myths, because I'll go into one that's pretty much has everybody living past the life expectancy, but most of them that we come across today. In many traditions, most of the individuals linked to extra long life are like kings, patriarchs, semi-divine beings, and heroes, suggesting that a long lifespan was more tied to status rather than biology. So let's take a deep look into the archetype. An archetype is the original model, the origin from which the rest are made. They show up in almost every civilization as the bridge between divine and human realms. The first archetype is usually represented as the first king, first teacher, first human, or the first human after a catastrophe, somewhere along those lines. In Mesopotamia, we have the Sumerian kings list, where kingship was believed to be descended from the heavens, with figures like Alulim, who was the first king on the list to rule the city of Eridu, after kingship had descended from heaven, and he ruled for about 28,800 to 36,100 years before the Great Flood happened. Now, as you move down the king's list, you will see that after the Great Flood, their reigns of kingship start to become shorter and shorter periods of time, such as the very popular Gilgamesh, who only reigned for 126 years. And of course, we can't forget Ziusudra, who was the chosen survivor of the flood, who went on to gain immortality. We go to the biblical or Hebrew, we see figures like Adam living for 930 years, Enoch living to 365 years until he was taken by God, because Enoch is a special case, described as actually never dying, because God took him and removed him from earth, as the text emphasizes he walked with God. And then we have Methuselah, who holds the record for 969 years. Shout out to Methuselah, that boy cold for that. All of these figures were before the world was washed away in the Great Flood, when the divine relationship was thought to be closer. Then we have figures like Noah, who is the survivor chosen by God. So Noah lived before and after the Great Flood, and his lifespan was 950 years. As time moves on, after the flood, we can see lifespan start to decline. For example, Terah, I never really know how to say, but who lived to only 205 years, and of course Abraham, who lived 175 years. You can see the clear downward slope of lifespans. And the biblical tradition is pretty good and pretty well versed, because it literally gives clear ages and also clear linear genealogy. Let's hop off the floods and go into the traditions and myths that don't so much correlate lifespans linking to a disaster. Excuse me. Looking into the Egyptian history, they preserved the history of divine and semi-divine rulers before humans had any play into this, and it is called the Zep Tepi, which means the first time. Zep Tepi is when the gods walked the earth and Ma'at, or balance, was established, and the rulers were the gods Ra, Shu, Geb, Osiris, and Horus. And Egyptians viewed them as the original kings of Egypt. After the gods came the Shemsuhor, who were followers of Horus, and they reigned for 36,620 years according to some Egyptian king lists. They came, and they were often described as demigods or semi-divine kings or semi-divine beings. And then we finally get to the first human king, who can either be called Menes or Narmer, who was said to have essentially reigned for only about 50 years, with no existing data about his birth or death dates. But the pharaohs were still thought to be a link between the living and the divine, though they were human in any case. Now, even though there isn't a flood that disrupts human interaction with divineness, there is a short myth, but I will let you know that this is just speculation from my end, because the King's List and the Book of the Heavenly Cow are two different approaches to the reasons the gods ascended to the heavens. Because the King's List correlates that humanity inherited what the gods created, but the story of Sekhmet's destruction correlates to humanity rebelling, the gods withdrawing, and balance being restored. But anyway, humans started to rebel against Ra, disrespecting divine authority, which is basically disrupting Ma'at. So Ra sends his eye, which takes the form of Sekhmet, the lioness goddess, to punish humanity. But Sekhmet goes overboard and nearly kills all of the humans, to the point that they are on the brink of extinction. So Ra stops her by brewing massive loads of beer and dyeing it red as if it was blood to get her drunk. After this, Ra decided that humans cannot be trusted to live among the gods, and withdraws from humanity, resulting in the gods ruling from the heavens and humans stand on earth, where suffering and pain now exist. Like I said, two different correlations, and This is its own myth, but I wonder if this can coexist with the concept of a disaster due to human disobedience, like the other myths involving floods, which result in humans becoming further away from the divine. Let's cover one more because this is just some fascinating information. In Hindu ancient history and mythology, which is by far the most fascinating to me, hands down, it doesn't really associate key human figures because all humans were considered to have the same life expectancy. Like I said earlier, most you do get that closeness to divineness, life expectancy going further than expected, but in some you don't, and Hindu is one of those cases. It really doesn't associate key human figures because all humans were considered to have the same life expectancy depending on the Yuga cycle, starting at 100,000 years and declining to less than 100 years in lifespan. And there were other figures that are said to transcend lifespan, like the sages and semi-divine beings. But in Hindu, we have the yugas that are represented by Dharma, who is the bull of cosmic creation. Dharma has 4 legs, but each leg that is lost is a decline in the yuga cycle. Satya Yuga, is the start of the cycles, which is the age of truth, where Dharma is complete, having all 4 legs and everything living in harmony. It lasted traditionally 1,728,000 years, and human lifespan lasted about 100,000 years. Then we have Treta Yuga. It's hard to say this because I'm not well versed in Hindu. But then we have Treta Yuga coming right after the first decline. Now Dharma has 3 legs, which is where divine incarnations and social hierarchies start to appear. Its duration is 1,296,000 years. Humans lived for tens of thousands of years in Treta Yuga. Then we have Dvapara Yuga. That's the best I got. Where Dharma has 2 legs and war comes into play, ending in Krishna's departure with the duration of 864,000 years and human lifespan at 1,000 years. Currently, we are in Kali Yuga, the lowest point of the cycle, where Dharma has only 1 leg. I mean, do I really have to explain all the stuff I explained? I mean, given that I described what came before, the beginning is 3,102 BC with the duration of 432,000 years, and human lifespan is less than 100 years at this point, clearly our current day. Now, there is a flood myth with Manu, who was the chosen survivor, as the archetype, but doesn't give the exact birth or death date. But he was expected to live as long as humans in the Satya Yuga cycle, and 71 Yuga cycles is 1 Manvantara, which means a Manvantara is 306,720,000 years. Doesn't mean he had to live the whole Manvantara though. It is also a cyclical thing, so we are said to be under the appearance of the 7th Manu type being currently, which is a whole nother story that I will eventually tell. So Hindu doesn't have a specific set of people because life expectancy was pretty consistent across humanity. But there is an archetype that we see appointed by divineness with Manu. Going through these myths, we see the similarities of life declining for certain figures and humans in general as time continues. Divinity being closer in earlier ages, and some type of event with the gods withdrawing and a restart ancestor. Like I said earlier, it's like falling away from the most divine times, not necessarily running into darkness. It's like we discussed in the Divine Index series about the Kingdom Medicine. The cosmos must move on, whether it's with us or not. A commonality you just can't ignore is that every culture has a break and shift in the past that gives off a universal intuition revolving around the same type of pattern. What ancient cultures might be saying is human lifespans reflect the state of the world. When harmony exists, life is longer, and when there's imbalance, life is shorter. also trying to tell us not to forget that there is a loss of memory tied to what life was like for humans before this cycle or age began. And maybe it's just something not meant for us to know. Maybe the cosmos moves on, but also with different emotions, resulting in the changing of the environment it gives off, which causes the species of it to move on with different emotion and intention also. But on the other hand, it may be a warning from ancestors to preserve knowledge better than they could if we have the capability. I mean, one thing is clear as day. Most ancient history and mythology, if not all, has a reoccurring theme and intuition that only differs in the tradition. So the lifespan aspect makes sense in the earlier times because if you live longer, you have more wisdom and you have more memory. But you might do a lot of contemplating, right? Shorter life means urgency, resulting in less time to gain knowledge and having a shorter memory. Throughout myths, time is treated as something resulting in decay because the longer that history unfolds, the more misconstrued it becomes, along with fading memory and new priorities coming into play. The traditions link lifespans to virtues, not rewards or punishments. Humans are the only species that are known to grapple with the thought of our lives as finite, while also being aware of a life that reaches to infinity. Catch y'all on the flip side.